Next, we want to look at a practical use of these formulas. I'm going to open up this sheet. You'll notice we have formulas here and here and here that allow us to pull out that information from over on the left in column B. So I'm going to pull these down, and you'll notice it exactly pulled out the first name, middle name if they had any, and the last name. This can be very useful in many different situations. Before we go on, notice that these are fairly complex up here and perhaps hard to understand unless you take a lot of time to work out what they are. On the next tab, we will create our own from scratch. But before I do, let's do something that's kind of fun. That is, when it works, I'm going to copy this and paste these names down below. Now Excel has a new feature called Flash Fill. I'm going to come down here, and when it works, it's great. So M-A-R-Y, and I'll come up here and Flash Fill, and it pulled out all the first names for me. It looks for a pattern to the cell next to it over here and says, oh, well, he wants Mary. What if I put Lou? And I do Flash Fill. Oh, that's a little bit more problematic, because even when they didn't have a middle name, then it pulled out the first name, Claire, John. But we'll do the last one as well. And Flash Fill. That looks good. So when it works, I really like it, and if I'm just doing it once, I can do that, but I better look over what it gives me just to make sure it's what I really want. If you really want to make sure you get the correct names, then it's important to just write a formula, and that will be correct every time as you do it over and over again. So let's go to the next worksheet and do that ourselves. Here I have several names. We want to pull out the first, last, and then the middle names. We have some examples up here, but I'm going to get rid of them because we're going to start from scratch. So the first name. What would we use? That's right. It's the left portion of whatever's in this cell, and in this case it would be, 6 characters. So let's do that. Equals left of here. I'm going to make these always absolute A so that I can be in any column and it will still look at what's in A when we work with it. Next, I need to tell it how many characters. Well, I could put that number in there, 6, or to make this more flexible, I would use find. Find text. What do I want to find? Well, I can go to the next space, so I'll go to find a space within, and that will be this A3, and again, make that absolute A relatively 3, $A3, and I can go ahead and close this, and notice it brought Nathan, but if you were to look more closely, you would find out there's actually a space after Nathan, because we included that space as well. That space was found at position 7, so it took the first 7 characters. So we better take that out. So before I do anything else, I'm going to do -1. I still get Nathan, but I don't have the space afterwards. And if I copy this down, it pulled out the first name of everybody. Let's next do the last name. That would be using the write command. But I need to tell it how many characters to use in that. I'm not sure how best to make this work, perhaps, but I would know if I knew where this last space is, then I could tell you the whole length minus that last space would give me how many characters are in the last name. To make this a little bit even better, all these names seem to have a first name, middle name, last name. So I'm going to change this to say Justin, Billy, Joe, Bean, and maybe the next one take out this Frith. space, so that some people have middle names and some don't. Some have multiple ones. Okay, let's get started. We're going to do this in very small chunks. It's kind of like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Well, we're going to do very small groups. So I'm going to first say, how many spaces do we have? To get that, I'm going to take the length of the whole name, substitute out all the spaces, and then take the length of what's left. The difference will tell me how many spaces the name has. So we have length of, and always put absolute A3. So 21, and you'll notice these vary as we go down. Now I'm going to get rid of all the spaces in the name, so equals substitute, and the text is A3, absolute, comma, the old text is a single space, the new text is nothing. How do I say that? Yeah, 2 double quotes in a row, and I'm going to get rid of all of them, so I'll just close it off there. I could tell it to just get rid of one, but here we go. And I get Nathan Scott Anderson, all without any spaces. Next, let's take the length of that. And different lengths. Now we can see how many spaces by saying equals the original length minus the length of the name without spaces, and it says, oh, there's 2 in this one. In most of these there'll be 2, but here you have 3 spaces because it has 4 names. Here you only have 1 space because it only has 2 names, the first and the last. Next, if we can identify what position that last space is in, then we can figure out how many characters in the last name. I can't do that very direct, except I can, now that I know which space it is, replace the second space with a unique character like an asterisk. So let's do that with substitute. Substitute, the text here is A3, comma, the old text is a space, the new text is an asterisk, put that in quotes too, and I'm going to give it an instance this time. It's the second space, what I figured out here in F3. So now I've got Nathan Scott asterisk Anderson and so forth for each one of these. Now let's find where that asterisk is located. So equals find what? Well, it's an asterisk. So in quotes, within text over here, G3, and it found it at position 13, and so forth on down through. Here, after Kirk, it was in position 5. Okay, now we're ready to do the last name. Pull this all together. So we'll say equals right of A3, absolute, comma, and I need to tell it how many characters. Well, in Anderson, it looks like there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If I take the full length, 21, minus what we found here, 13, that's 8. So I'll do that. So 21 minus the 13, and I'll put enter, and it pulled out Anderson and each of the last names as needed. Well, that's great. We did it. Except we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 extra cells in order to do it. Let's bring these all into one formula. To do that, we'll gather things together until the formula here that gives us Anderson only relates to what's in A3. To do that, I can either start replacing things as I go in Anderson and work my way forward, Or I can start here at the beginning and just make sure anything I have only refers to cell A3. So A3, that one only refers to A3. That one only refers to A3. This one refers to D3. So when I see D3, I'm going to go copy what's in D, except for the equal sign. Control C, escape, come back here and replace it by double-clicking on D3 and do a Control V paste. Enter. It remained the same. In fact, Anderson remained the same, so I must be okay. I'll click on the next one. It's wanting C3 minus E3. So C3, Control copy, escape, and I'll replace it. Enter. I still got 2. Minus E3. So come here and copy this. Escape. Now whenever I have a minus in there, I need to be careful. If I had 2 pieces in the previous formula, like minus this, minus that, I'd get the wrong thing, and so I'd want to put an extra paren around it so it minuses the whole thing. In this case, there's only one part, so I'll put Control V and Enter. Okay, we still get Anderson, so we're in good shape. Let's go to the next one. F3. So I'll take over here what the formula is here and put it in F3, and we're still working. You'll notice the hard part was what we did originally, coming up with these formulas to get where we wanted to go. Turning them into one formula or a mega formula is fairly routine and straightforward. It's just tedious, but we can do it. So we'll go to this next one. It says what's in G3. So I'll take the formula out of G3 and paste it in here. Good. We're still getting Anderson, so this is the last one we have to do. Everything seems to be correct so far. This one says go back to C3. I'll take that. And replace it here. And I still get Anderson. So now all I need to do is take the formula in H3 and replace it. So copy, escape, and H3. This is all one formula, so I won't need the parens, and I'll put paste, enter. Good, it works. In fact, let's just copy this down, and it's pulling up all the last names. That means we could erase some of these, and I'll still get the last names. They no longer depend on those earlier cells. I do like to keep track of how I got there so that later if I had a problem or I wanted to change some small thing, I could just make the change here and then gather it up again. Sometimes that's very useful. Okay, so Anderson works here, and you'll notice if we copy this, because it's all referring to column A, so I'll copy this cell and just paste it down here. I'm able to pull that out no matter where I put it. That formula looks to what's in column A, and we'll pull out the last name. Well, we've got the first and the last name. Let's pull out the middle names next. I'm going to change this to middle. And what could we do there? The easiest way to do that I can think of right off, where we are using both the first and the last, we've got the formulas for that. What if we just substitute out those two names, and anything left over then is the middle names? So let's do that. I'm going to say equals substitute, and the text we're substituting, well, that's over here, absolute A, comma, the old text. It doesn't matter. Do you want to do first name or last name? It doesn't matter which. I'll just click on I3, the last name, comma, and the resulting is nothing. So it's Nathan Scott. and I could copy those down for each one. Okay, let's now get rid of the first name. I can take what I have here and just substitute out the first name by wrapping that in here, substitute, and the text is what we have there, comma, the old text is B3, and I want to replace it with nothing. Now I've just got Scott, I've just got Ingrid, and so forth. Kurt didn't have a middle name. Justin had two middle names, Billy Joe. So it's pulling out exactly what we want. But notice there's a space right at the front. How do I get rid of that? That's correct. We'll want to put a trim around this. So trim. And back here. Now we get rid of that beginning space. And there's a space at the end you didn't see. But we've got rid of them. We've got all the middle names. Okay, just one thing to finish this up, and that's replace it so it only refers to A3. So let's do this first one, I3 and B3. I'll go to B3 first and get that. And let's put that into this location. Enter, and I'm still getting Scott, so that worked. Now I need to get rid of the I3. So I'll come over to I3, pick up the formula except for the equals, and replace I3 with that formula, and hit enter. It works. It's a very large formula, as you can see here, but it all works, and we can copy that down. And now I can just take that formula and put it wherever I want and pull out these middle names. Where was that one with Billy Joe? I'm going to put it right here. And you notice Billy Joe then is pulled out. We have now the first, middle, and last names that can all be pulled out directly from what's in column A. Let's also do this concatenation here on the right. And we have the BYU ID. We want to concatenate that. So I say equals this ampersand the email, and all of those appear.